Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Zulu Painting Show. Sorry. So I also on Fridays do a shopping show. It's called the Zulu's Shopping Show. Very creatively named, so hence the confusion. Also, if you didn't know, there are a whole bunch of videos on painting as well as what things Zulus is coming out with, and deep dives into delightful RPG things. Just yesterday, we were talking about Eldritch Horrors, the Cthulhian mythos, and H.P. Lovecraft's contribution to RPGs in general. But that's not what you tuned in today for. Today, you tuned in to learn about painting. Now, there's a couple things we're going to go over today. Firstly, we're going to dive a little bit more into zenithal priming, which will make more sense when we look at the models. We'll play around a little bit with contrast paints. We're going to check in with our Wolverine that we did last week. And yeah, we're going to see how far we can get on, that's right, a giant snail, which I'm very excited for. So let's go ahead and pop over to the mini cam. There it is. All right, so it's kind of out of focus, but here is our subject for today. I love the modeling on this particular guy. He is delightfully unique. As you can see, we've got a shell that looks like it's sort of made of wood. We've got some stuff that's broken down here. Make sure my light is getting underneath it. There we go. He's got these rocks that I think he's planning on throwing at people. I was thinking it might be kind of fun to play around with turning those into sort of crystals. So we'll play around with that and see what we can do with that. But for the color scheme for this guy... Oh, sorry. Let's go ahead and bring it back a little farther. So, where did I get this delightful model, you might be wondering? And that's an excellent question. This kit here, let me just bring up the old camera for a moment. So the Epic Encounters, focus, there we go. Village of the Goblin Chief. It is the same one that had these guys in it, the ones that we did the batch painting project with. It has some goblins with frogs, goblins with shields, goblins licking frogs. It's a whole thing. It's delightful. But one of the things it also comes with is this delightful model. Now, there is a sort of companion set that goes with it that is delightful. It is a Hydra, but it's not a conventional Hydra. It's this big plant Hydra monster. And I painted this guy up for a D&D session. And so I have kind of an idea of what I want the general paint scheme to look like. So I'm going to try and take and replicate a lot of these same principles on the snail. I'm going to go over kind of how I did these vines here, a little bit of how we did the face, the wood of the chest. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be our example, and that's what we'll be moving towards. But I also mentioned a follow-up on the Wolverine because I did do some more painting on him. So this is... Still need to clean up his legs are still kind of messy. I slapped the light blue on and was just like, it's been a long session of painting. But this is him mostly done. I still got to do the cockpit. But you're not seeing this wrong on your screen. His color is very heavily contrasted. Has a delightful sort of what would you call this? Cell shaded look. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. And it's fun to play around with kind of a different style of painting to kind of see what you can do. So yeah, what's kind of fun is you can see it on the legs. So on this leg, because the light green is supposed to represent your light source, a lot of the light green spots are here along the tops of the legs, whereas on this leg, because of the angle it's at, the light green is more up here, but with a little bit down the side. So it really makes your sort of shadowing and that sort of thing just really, really exaggerated, which I think is a lot of fun. Reads well on the table too, which is nice. So that's him, which is a lot of fun, but we got to come back to this guy. So now, if you'll notice, he has a definite contrast between the underneath side of him and the top side of him. That's because he was... Oh, I gotta stop hitting my camera, or my tripod. There we go. He was hit entirely with a black primer, and then from just the top, I sprayed a white primer, and then I've gone in under here for like his neck region and some of the tentacles, and I've hit that with a little bit of white dry brushing. Now, I want a little bit more contrast. Oh, you can't really see it there, sorry. I want a little bit more contrast on these under tentacles, so I'm just going to do a little bit of dry brushing before we dive into it too much. We've got our hobby dry brush. We're going to dive into that one. We've got our white paint from our starter kit. I'm going to snag that guy. And where is... Oh, I'm going to have to move the camera yet again, because all of my paper towels are under its foot. Alright. I generally find that having just a pile of paper towels at my work area is very helpful. That way you don't end up with one that's gotten very dry very quickly. Let's see. I have a good spot for this to show you what I'm doing. But you put a little dollop onto your... Well, generally what I like to do is I'll put a little dollop onto my paper towel. I really should be showing you this. Here, let me rearrange a little bit so I can show you what I'm doing. It's no good to tell you what I'm doing if I can show you. Ah, there we go. Now, the difficulty, of course, is that it is white on white. So that's not great. Oh, yeah, you can't see any of that, can you? Well, you can kind of with that. So you put a little bit on your brush there, and then you're just going to wipe it. Oh, you can use this for contrast. So you can actually kind of see it on the green there, how I'm leaving just a little bit of the white on the top of it, but leaving most of the green showing. So once there's not a lot of paint coming off the brush, come over to your model. So this arm here is the one that I want to show off the stuff. I'm just going to give a light dusting to really sort of exaggerate some of those details. Now you can really see those lines, and most of this is going to be pretty covered with our contrast paint. Oh, and I still am not 100% sure what I'm doing for these tentacles. I think so. This shell here is going to be a very nice dark wood. The patches here are going to be our green contrast. We're going to do a very light green for the vines here. And then I'm thinking what I might do is kind of a lighter brown on the limbs and body of the snail. Now, for that to work, I'm going to really need to exaggerate... Oh, I need to stop shaking the camera. I really need to exaggerate this dry brushing, because the lighter contrast colors don't really show up over the black. So you got to make sure they've got a good surface to show up on. I made that mistake with these guys. So this got the zenithal priming, and then I tried to use the skin contrast for the skin, obviously. But as you can see here at the bottom, I didn't quite get enough white on there. So it's still very dark. Now, you can get away with that a lot more with some of the darker contrast paints. So your Cragor brown, and even the Militarum green. But if you're doing something lighter, like what we're going to do for the branch, so like your skin color or this contrast skeleton horde, you start running into troubles with it because it doesn't really show up. It doesn't really darken the stuff. So we got to really make sure that if you're going to use a lighter contrast, which we are going to for the tentacles and things, that you've really lightened up your area that you're going to work on. All right. Yeah, I think that looks about right. And as is a lot of times the case, it's more what feels right. The subjectiveness of art means that there's not a wrong way to do it. And I know that immediately people are gonna be like, well, but what about this? Yeah, there are situations where technically there's some wrongness to it. But in the same way, you can start a sentence with the word "and." You can put colors together that aren't supposed to be to invoke a feeling. Think of it like colored poetry. If the feeling that you invoke from your actions are what you intend, then you have succeeded at what you are trying to do. All right. And I'm just trying to pick out a lot of the details because having the details picked out now is going to make it so that when we start putting the contrast paint on, it has sort of something to work with. Now, obviously, that gash is a lot of fun. We're going to play around with that if we get a chance. But obviously, letting the sort of contours of the model be the thing that really brings out the color is what we're going to want to do. But also making sure that we have a good base is very helpful. And this, again, and I've talked about this before, but I'll mention it again. Something like this is a lot of fun because it helps you really sort of think about what level of contrast and value you have on things. I think I talked a lot more about it when we were working on our white model before. But I think it can get really easy to get caught up in like, oh, I've got this color, so I don't need to worry about... I'm going to set this aside. I don't need to worry about adding more value to the no, value is the color and then tint is the lightness. I'll be honest, I only vaguely know the terminology for painting, which is probably not good, but whatever. All right, so I feel good about our color we got here. I think it's time to go ahead and dive into slapping some paint on. Now, again, it's good to start at the things that are the sort of lowest parts, the things that are sort of deepest in there, so that you can finish the bottom parts before you move to the top parts. Because if you were to do, say, the green on this top here, and then move into the wood here, you're having to move past stuff that you've already worked on. So it's good if you sort of work your way out on the model. It just makes your life easier. With contrast paints, and this one is the greatest example, need to always remember to shake them. Now, you can kind of hear in this one that rattle. I've actually put an agitator in there, which was just, I had an extra little metal head that I just slapped in there. Sorry, by metal head, I mean the head of a miniature that I ended up not using. So it's in there now, making things agitated. So yeah, we're going to start with our contrast cyborg brown. Now you'll recognize this color. No, is it cyborg? Krygor. Sorry, Krygor. Or however you pronounce that. It's a made-up word anyway. Anyway, you'll recognize that from the shoulders and quivers of these guys. So it's always nice where you can to kind of keep colored continuity. So we're using similar colors so we can have a similar look and feel to these miniatures. Now we're just going to shake that paint. We're going to shake it vigorously. All right. Now you can definitely use your wet or dry palette for these paints, getting them out onto the palette before you start throwing them on. Now, what do I want to use? So normally with these, I would just jump straight to our what is this one? Our monster brush. Because the monster brush is going to have has that nice big thick bristles. You can get them all over the place. I may still, although I don't know what's happened. My monster brush for some reason has curled over pretty badly. So I don't know what happened there. It's not my friend. Why would you do this to me? I didn't leave it in my water pot. I just apparently I was too aggressive with it. So, yeah, we'll make it work. Yeah, so we've got a lot of area to cover. So we're going to go ahead and start with the bigger brush. We might go to a littler brush for some of the stuff on the top because there's a lot more kind of area that you need to get in close with, but for now, use this monster brush. Oh, yeah. See, and the point of the contrast paint is that it's a bit dark right now. So the problem is, see, cameras are not nearly as powerful as the human eye. So while the settings I have the camera on makes it so that you can see the detail in the white, as soon as I start putting darker colors in here, it starts getting harder to see. Now I'm going to try to not get it on these sort of branch arms. Oh, wait, no, the branch arms, sorry. The branch arms are going to do like the branches. The body, we're going to do the lighter color. Yeah, that'll work. So the branches are okay if we get a little bit on there because we're not using contrast paints on them. But, you know what, it's good to have them sort of done up anyway. Oh, goodness. Already into the weeds, so to speak. And again, one of the techniques I like to use when it comes to trying to make sure that stuff's getting up to the edges of things is to get my brush down onto the model and sort of just push it up towards the thing that I don't want to get on top of. Oh, man. You know what? Let's get the bottom part first. We'll come take our time with the top later. And I'm going to be coming back through on these vines, so it's okay if we get some brown on them. That's always the nice part about your first color, where you can just sort of slap it on there. I mean, obviously you want to think about what you're doing with your lighter colors, if you're doing contrast stuff, but for things like these branches and these vines, we're going to be going back over them with different colors. Also, you'll notice I'm still using a handle on this guy, but this model is significantly bigger than the other ones. So this handle is actually designed for larger models. And again, it's that need versus want. You do not need a handle for a model. You certainly don't even need a name brand one. A little bit of that sticky tack, the stuff you use to put up posters and things, and a paint bottle. You're golden. You're good to go. However, if you are looking for one of these, I would say that you could get them from our site, but I would be lying to you as we are currently out of stock. However, we are trying very hard to get them restocked so that you guys can get some of these in your hands. I did today put in the description a link to our contrast paints. If you're wanting to play around with contrast paints on your Battletech miniatures, on your D&D minis, on whatever minis you happen to be painting, I think they're delightfully fun to get like just a good sort of base color on things, get started. Or even if you want to just, you know, if you're wanting to get a whole army of stuff painted and tabletop ready and you don't want to fuss with it too much, a zenithal priming, a hit with a contrast, maybe a little bit of touch-ups with some layers here and there to get that the second or even third color on there, and you got models that are ready to go. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and if you're looking for, you know, getting stuff done quick, and you got large batches, we do actually have a batch painting video. If you go to the archives of the older stuff, I go over these guys actually. Oh, you can't really see them, but yeah, those little guys, the goblins with the big swords. I went over that. Painted them as a crew, kind of talking a little bit about how, what's the best method to make sure that you can really just bang out a group of them. Because as someone who, when I played Warhammer 40k, played Imperial Guard, I understand the need to be able to very quickly paint large groups of miniatures. So many guardsmen. I think that's why I've been enjoying Battletech so much, is each mech gets to be its own sort of hero, have its own story, its own sort of attributes and things. All right, now we're on to the interesting part. I gotta get around those leaves. Huh. Yeah, the more I'm looking at it, the more I kind of want these to be crystals he's throwing. just because it can be a lot of fun to play around with those. And actually, a lot of the techniques we used for the Wolverine we'll probably use for these crystals to really make them pop. Oh, I just loaded the brush too. That's okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and pop over to a slightly smaller brush because we got a lot of detail stuff we want to do in there, and I don't really want to cover the grass patch or the plant patches with, excuse me, with our brown contrast, just because it'll make it harder. I can still touch up, but for now we're gonna head over to our regiment brush. Dive in with that. Pre-wet the brush. I'm gonna make sure that it's water that's there near the metal part as opposed to our paint. Because as soon as you start gumming it up, it starts getting a little messier. And the thing to remember is you want to really bring your contrast paints up against the two surfaces. As much as you don't want to muss up the other surface, you got to remember that you don't want white peeking out in the middle of things that should be much darker. And we've got our green that's going to be going on here, and that'll be helping a lot. But you know, if it's not appropriate for the green to be somewhere, then we shouldn't expect that to be the color that covers. And honestly, I think that's kind of what's fun about painting for me is trying to like kind of plan out kind of how things are going to look, thinking about, oh gosh, I'm covering my finger with paint. You know, it's almost like its own little kind of game in and of itself. You're trying to think forward of like, okay, so what am I doing next? Where am I going to go? How do I need to cover? And of course, how am I going to talk while I'm working on small detailed spots? Oh goodness, it's a real mess in here. That's okay. We're going to clean it up. It's going to be a lot more detailed. It'll be great. Yeah, that's why I'm okay with being kind of messy every now and then, because I know I can go back and clean it up. All right, does that look like we've got the whole shell done? Oh man, I'm gonna have to change my camera settings here in a sec. Has a bright white and a very dark brown. All right. Oh. There we go. Yeah. All right. Already got a good thing started. All right, perfect. Okay. So for now, we're going to go ahead and say that the brown is done. Don't forget to close your paints or you will have a bad day because you will knock them over and make a mess of things. She might not. You may have quite good control of your brush and whatnot. I make a mess sometimes. It's just all hands all over the place. All right. Yeah, let's dive into it. So, like I said, this one has that nice separated look to it. So we're talking Militarum green. You can hear that rattle. That's the agitator in there. Fun tidbit: if you've got the reason it's called a rattle can is because inside it there is an agitator. It is a small piece of metal or plastic that is designed to sort of knock around the stuff inside to really help it get all mixed together. Because sometimes the stuff that you have inside these has a tendency to separate, and you don't want that. Kind of like when you grab your what's it called? Mustard, and you go to put it on your sandwich and forgot to shake it up, and so you just get mustard water. You don't want mustard water on your miniature, unless you do, in which case I can't help you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and keep with our regiment brush for this because we are again trying to do some more kind of detailed chunks. As you can see with this green, there's definitely a lot, you can see a lot more through it. So we're going to have to be a little bit more... but even though it is a little bit more transparent, you can still... if I get it on the brown, you can still see it. So we're going to have to touch up some places where our green gets on our brown. Yeah. Yeah, and with the green, you can really start to see that you can kind of see those colors through. So you can see the white coming up through. Now, if you wanted to play around with the colors, and we'll do this with the vines of the arms, but you can have that undercoat be a slightly different color, and that'll drastically change the look of your contrast. It was funny. My roommate was watching me paint the big old Hydra, and I was on the vine section, and he was like, "Why are the vines so orange? What is happening there?" I was like, "Oh, just wait. It'll make sense in a bit." And sure enough, I took the orange, I slapped a little bit of a red wash onto it, and it really changed the sort of look and feel of the vines, which we'll see more once we get... oh, I see there's a little spot there I missed. We'll see more of that when we get to it here in a little bit. But he was mentioning, like, how did you know to do that? It's like, well, I practiced. And honestly, that's kind of the thing, is just playing around with different colors and kind of seeing what they do is a lot of fun. You know, experiment. The other thing to remember is not all of them. You can't be too afraid of trying weird, crazy stuff on your guys. I mean, obviously, like, you know, don't go too experimental on your absolute favorite model, but you know, you can do some really interesting stuff. Just gotta play around with it. Ooh, look at that moss. Oh, the nice contrast to it too. And then we'll get some... those vines are going to get much brighter, so we're going to really make those pop, which will be fun. Just get a little bit more. Gotta get this guy. And truthfully, if I wasn't so sort of, you know, time crunched, we'd really let that brown dry a little bit more to make sure I didn't mix my colors. But it should be fine. Looks like we're doing okay. Yeah, there we go. Got that moss taken care of. I think I'm gonna leave it there. It is. Dang it. It's difficult that the head right there is very white, because I'm gonna darken up my color a little bit so you can see. Oh, you can see a little bit more of the details there. Yeah. Okay, so while that's drying, let's go ahead and actually talk a little bit, or go over a little bit what I was talking about with that, playing around with, and I think I've mentioned it before in other videos, where the color that you put as your primary color and then your wash color, when you put sort of different colors on top of each other, they can really change how they feel. And we're gonna dive right into that. So we're gonna grab this Skag Brown, which is just a terrible name. Scrag Brown, still a terrible name. Which, as you can see, is a very orangey, a very bright red or brown. So we're gonna go ahead and grab that guy. Give it a good proper shaking. We finally head over to our wet palette, who's just been sitting here quite patiently, waiting for some paint to go on it. And again, if you're looking to get yourself a wet palette, I've put a link to this in the description. However, if you don't want to purchase one, making one is actually pretty simple. Get yourself any sort of container that is watertight, generally sort of flat and wide. A sponge, you can get, like, from just the grocery store, you can get those stacks of, I think, 6 for a couple bucks. And then this, on the top part, is parchment paper. So the better the quality of the parchment paper, the less likely it is that you're going to break through it with your brush. I have a tendency to use the back of my brush for things, but yeah. So let's see. Let's go ahead and start on this one that's kind of sticking out. I'm going to start just with a base layer of our brown. Also, I've been very lucky with our focal point today. I feel like I've been just keeping everything in focus, which is nice. Of course, now we're getting to those. Tentacles are always really strange to paint because they're round, which is weird. And then this one has the added sort of strangeness of, because it has wood grain on it, it's that much more difficult to kind of see all the angles too. So I'm going to put you at some strange angles, but this is so I can actually see what I'm painting. What's nice is with our zenithal undercoat here, we can really just kind of do nice thin coats, so we can really embrace that under coat. Oh gosh. So I don't want to get the body of the snail because that's going to be our sort of light brown we're going to do. And remember, you can turn the model on its head to be able to get the angles that you need. I actually find that a lot of times my models will end up in strange positions to really get in there. Oh, sorry. Stop bumping the camera. Now, for some of these bits and pieces, if you can't see it while you're like really getting after it and changing all the angles and all that stuff to paint it, your players definitely won't see it. That being said, I don't promote sort of lazy painting. You know, you've got, if you can get to it, you should definitely try. But if not, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah. So as you can see, our starting colors already, it's very orange. By the end of it, we'll make it look more proper, like it's supposed to be there, and not like a weird orange limb. So we need to do a couple of limbs because we need to wait until our paint is dry before we go hauling off and doing our washes on them. So we'll go ahead and hit a couple more of these. What I like about a model like this is, and the Hydra too, and to a much greater degree, is a model like this is generally going to be sort of a big reveal. You know, it's like in movies or shows or things. You know, when you spend all that time sort of seeing parts of it and hearing about it, but once you actually see the monster, then it gets to be really fun. So that's, you can kind of think of that like these kind of bigger, more. Oh my gosh, it's such a difficult spot to get it. Darn it. But yeah, you can have that. You can think of these sort of monsters as those kind of big reveal sort of situations. Also, this is right here a great advocate for painting models before they've been assembled. Now, this one came assembled, but if you are building models and you're not going to be throwing them onto the table, there's definitely something to be said for not necessarily fully assembling them before you start the painting process. And we might go over, because I have a handful of models that I've gotten in the process of cleaning them because they're old metal models. A lot of their parts have come undone, so we might use those as an example of sort of how to paint things separately. Also, I'm sorry that you're at not a great angle. There's unfortunately just not a lot to be done about that. It's a tough angle to get to. Ooh. So if you'll notice, on the undercoat here, and I'm covering a lot of it up with this paint because it's not as opaque as some of the other ones, but a lot of those lines that you have for the wood grain, those same lines could be achieved. If you've got like a tentacle that doesn't really have a lot of detail to it, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, this is kind of boring," there's a lot of stuff you can do to add that kind of look of wood grain to it. Now, it's time consuming, but if you're looking at a surface thinking to yourself, it's real flat and boring, there are techniques that can be used to liven them up. And using this sort of as your example, or another model as your example of kind of what it would look like, can be a great way to figure it out. So, if you notice this guy here, it's essentially a series of sort of lines that follow the contour of the tentacle, and they sort of go over each other, but they always stay kind of the same thickness, and except for at the end there, they'll taper off. So you could, with having a dark limb like this, even if it was already flat, you could reproduce those lines if you were so inclined. It's not simple, but it's doable. We might play around with that a little bit, if that's something you guys want to look into. I'll be honest, I haven't really played around with it yet. I've definitely seen some other painters on YouTube give it a go, and to incredible results. Now, granted, the sort of people that I'm watching on YouTube do painting shows are doing them because they are quite talented, which is funny because I'm sure that I've definitely had people look at what I've done and I've been like, well, this is quite talented. To which I tell them, well, it's mostly just me sort of following it's paint by numbers. You're just sort of following the things. So in the same way, I'm sure that they're like, well, no, I'm just doing what I see. So it's, as Matt likes to say, it's perspective. Which apparently he's trying to say that less. Also, for those of you who don't know, Matt is the owner of Zulus. So if you ever get a chance, chatting with him is a hoot and a half. He's a thinker. He's got about 110 things going in his noodle at any given time. Which, if you want to talk to someone who's about 100 different places at once, then it's a lot of fun. If that sort of thing drives you nuts, then maybe don't. Oh, it's hard to reach spots. All right, we're getting close to... Oh, here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. I was completely out of my painting area. But I get too involved with what I'm actually doing, and then I don't look at the monitor, and I can paint on my own time. This is paint for you guys. So if I'm not doing it in front of the camera, what's the point? Oh man, yeah, it does really look orange, which looks very out of place. All right. Oh, I gotta get some of that stuff under there. Stuff over there. Oh gosh. It's really hard to get to spots. All right, so we've got some orange on here. We'll let that dry for just a sec. I'm gonna grab and the idea is that I would do the orange on all of the things, but I wanna make sure that I can show you what I want to do with them without not being able to do all of it. And we might come back to this tomorrow or week after next. Because there's definitely some finishing techniques that I kind of want to show you guys on these, the crystals and that sort of thing, and we're kind of running low on time. Mustard water. Sorry, there was a comment on Facebook about the ew mustard water, and I just now noticed it, although even though the mustard water was a long dead conversation, but we brought it back up, so that's fun. Alright, so now we're going to our skeleton horde, which is a brown contrast, but a much lighter contrast. So, oh, also, I think the light's still there, yeah. So if you'll notice, the head has a variety of interesting ridges on it, and I really want to sort of mirror the pink heads of our Hydra that's hiding over here. So what I'm going to do is those kind of strange panels on the top, we're going to do that kind of pink with the white. Actually, we might do like his teeth as that kind of white look. I don't know. We're going to play around with it, but the body of the snail, everything up to this sort of part here, we're going to do it with our light contrast. Just kind of continue with that brown theme. I know that a lot of times slugs have a very sort of gray body, I guess. Well, sometimes they're, you know, I don't know. I'll be honest, don't spend a lot of time looking at slugs. Or snails, for that matter. Plus, this is a snail that's made of plant matter. Yeah. Oh, am I actually? There we go. So yeah, as you can see with this contrast, as opposed to our dark brown one, you can really see all of the other undercoats. So I might do some more stuff with this, because this is not necessarily the color that I'm looking for. That's okay. We can play around with it. As we learned from, I think it was the Grendel. As I was doing the purple, and I almost immediately regretted what I did. You can fix most things that you do. Oh, speaking of fixing, I'm going to need to play with those. Also, the thing to remember is how it looks when it's wet versus how it looks when it's dry is going to be very different. The horse that we did completely with contrast paints, I think is a great example of, you know, it's going to look different when it's done. See, we got that. You know what? I think we need to whiten that before I go throwing the contrast on it. So we're going to do the other, because I went a little heavy over here with the contrast, so we're going to use that on this side of the tail. You know what? We're just going to do the whole thing. It'll be fine. We'll come back and fix that later. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just wanted a slightly different color for that. So we're going to probably play around with it. We're getting that base color down, though. And now that we've got those different colors on it, you can really see kind of the what I was talking about with that head parts. Yeah. Not pleased with that, but that's okay. We're learning, we're figuring stuff out. I think that's nice to see sometimes, is, you know, even though I've been doing this for a couple years and I know I'm slapping some paint out, there's definitely times where I'm just like, oh, that didn't do what I wanted it to. And then I think fixing things that aren't exactly what you want, or making minor adjustments to make it do what you want, I think is definitely a valuable skill when it comes to painting in general. All right, so we've got the body of the snail done. We've got the tentacles started. They look pretty dry to me now, so let's go ahead and dive into that. So I mentioned that we're going to use that very orange color, and then we're going to do a red wash. Oh, I keep bashing the camera. I'm sorry, guys. So this is our, oh gosh, Caraborg Crimson, which is fun. And they're, both Army Painter and Citadel have colored washes. And if you want, you can actually make your own washes. I gotta remember, water and a bit of dish soap will generally help. Citadel also has, where is it? Is this the lamium medium? You take whatever paint you want and a little bit of the lamium medium and you can create a wash. And then Army Painter has a quick shade wash mixing medium, and essentially this guy without the pigment, essentially. So your pigment is going to be whatever paint you pick, and then you're going to just slap that in with those guys, and then you can go to town. But I'm going to use the pre-mixed ones because I've never really been good at remixing the same color. And I generally paint large groups of things, so consistency in color is very helpful for me. Now, sure, this guy is one mini with that by itself, and it's kind of a hero character mini, but I've also got a lot of other things that it needs to sort of keep in color scheme with, like for instance, the Hydra that's again hiding back over there. It's looking at us. Anyway, so we've gotten our very orange limbs. We've got our crimson wash. We're just gonna slap it on there. We'll do it like we would any other wash. It's just to say, make sure we got a good amount, enough that it can kind of flow into the recesses. And again, with washes, if you brush sort of along the side, you'll really get the paint out of the brushes or the bristles. Here, we're gonna lighten this up just a little. Oh, I darkened it up. Lighten this up just a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. We don't need to see the details on the face anymore. We're getting dark details now. There it is. So yeah, now that we've managed to get a nice even coat, we go through, we do a nice even coat of our contrast, or our wash, our shade, whichever name you want to use for them. I feel that Shakespeare has given us the tools that we need to understand that just because it's called something other than what it is, it still is the same. What about roses? Yeah, I don't know why we're so literary today, but we really are. Who would have thought that today was poetry painting? But like I said, poetry and painting have a lot of similarities. You know, the idea is that while generally words are used to communicate an idea, poetry is using those same words but attempting to evoke the meaning behind them. In the same way that color has shadow in itself, but what we're trying to do is create that shadow, create those colors and tones to make you think that you see something that maybe isn't necessarily there. I don't mean to just let that hang there for a moment. I'm just concentrating on getting the colors right because I don't want to slap this wash on areas that have contrast paint on them because that would not work very well. Also, man, I need to keep this in focus. There we go. Ah, dang it. I didn't want to get the rocks too much because I'm going to be playing around with their colors later, but ooh, we are putting it on thick. So if you got spots that are pooling up, rinse off your brush, dry it off just by putting it on, dabbing it onto your paper towel or whatever absorbent cloth you have with you. And then you can just poke the tip of your now clean brush towards the area, and that capillary effect that actually keeps the paint in the brush you can use to sort of suck up the extra paint. And if you have spots that don't have enough, you can then put it on those. All right. So as you can see, we've already really changed the color of that browny orange to a much more, and it'll look better as it dries. But yeah, we've already been playing around with that color. We've gotten it changed just by using a red wash on an orange brown. And you could essentially get the same results from a brown and a brown wash, like a darker brown and a brown wash, but this creates a slightly different sort of color feel to it, which I think is a lot of fun. All right. Yeah, we still got a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and... Ooh, do we want to do the head or the vines? Kind of leaning towards the head because I think it has a very fun color, and as a fun contrast to this very sort of muted colors. The head is much more of a bright and interesting one. And the reason that I did that on the Hydra was because I realized that, you know, you've got this whole sort of, you know, let me grab the Hydra out while this guy dries for a little bit. So you've got this giant model that has all these different parts and pieces to it. And the heads, I thought, could very easily get sort of lost in the same kind of green color. So I wanted to kind of bring out the detail of each of the heads. And so hence them looking like flowers. Plus the juxtaposition of, you know, having a very big and fierce creature and then flowers, which are generally thought of as much sort of softer and nicer, I thought was kind of a fun thing. And yes, I need to still do the teeth on this guy. I just haven't gotten around to it because I got a lot of projects to paint, as it turns out. Bunches and bunches. All right. Well, I think... Oh, man. Well, I think since we got a good example of what the heads look like, I think I'm going to dive into these vines, because I think the vines will be a fun way to show you how this sort of mess can really be cleaned up to be kind of a fun and nice looking thing. So we're going to dive into our War Boss green, and this is actually very similar. Actually, do I want to use... Oh. Yeah, they are very similar. A little easier for me to see the difference. You know what? I think I'm actually going to go with our War Boss green, just because the War Boss green has a much sort of brighter and more sort of natural green. Not natural green. How would I put this? I don't know. It's a little brighter, which is kind of what I want. The green of the moss is a delightful color, but it's a little bit more... How do I put this? Natural looking. And the vines are going to look almost a little unnatural. They're going to, by the end of it, have a very, very sort of bright look. Actually, not dissimilar to our Wolverine's look. Because again, I like that sort of pop of color, that kind of juxtaposition of natural colors and bright colors, and I think that'll just be a lot of fun. For this one, we're going to go ahead and go to our starter brush, because it has kind of a finer point, but not too fine. Oh, forgot to wet the brush. Always wet the brush. And again, I spin the brush on the palette to sharpen the bristles, to bring them to a point. Yeah. And as you can see, it's already a slightly different color. So even just with this, you could really bring out a difference in the colors. But we're going to really push that. We're going to push that difference. Oh yeah, I like this War Boss green. I think this was a good choice. Now, whenever possible, if you're supporting your finger on your model, try to put it on parts that haven't really been painted yet. Any sweat from your hand, any paint that might be on your hand, you'll either pull off some of the existing paint on it, or you might put some other colors that you don't mean to on it. So whenever possible, using your paint handle, your other hand, to support as opposed to parts of the model is going to be for the best. Now we got a little bit of the brown here on this limb, so we'll just do a couple coats to try and bring that up. And we also want to focus on these leaves. Bring out the detail of those. Because we're not going to be... I don't think we're going to use a wash on these. So we're gonna need to make sure that our green here is our dark spot. So that when we come back through with our lighter one, we can pick up the details there. Oh boy. Yeah, we definitely need to do a couple coats on this. I was maybe not as clean with my... Although it's that first coat. That's kind of to be expected. And what's nice is with these vines running through both the brown and the green, by having this sort of single unified color running through both of them, it really brings the two colors together and makes it look like they're part of a single thing, as opposed to just two different colored things sitting on top of each other. Yeah, so it's a delightful unifying effect. What's nice is a lot of modelers know that, so they will do things like this. So as you're going through and painting, it makes it a little easier. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to come back and do some finishing detail work on this guy. I think next week we'll probably go back to doing some Battletech, but then the week after that we'll come back to this guy to kind of bring it together. And I'm using my green to kind of clean up some of these spots. It's not the best, but it's what I'm doing. What's kind of nice is the angle that I'm painting at. Let me just... the base is actually on my table surface, which whenever you can do that it's ideal. It's sometimes not... You don't want to be like completely hunched over your desk or whatever surface you're painting on. So, you know, it's not always going to be possible, but where this model is a little larger and our handle is a little bigger, we can do that. Nice little leaves. Bright leaves. I'll have to do a couple coats on there to lighten up that very dark brown. Oh, there's another leaf there. Oh man, even just that is starting to really look good. Oh yeah, and we're starting to get a little bit of drying on there, so it's definitely you have to be looking for a very specific color to want to use this sort of orange and red wash. But I think it's still organic enough looking, and is this, I don't know, I like and especially once we get the pink on the head, the flower part, I think it's really gonna come together. Oh, you know what I could do? Now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking these two ridges along the top are gonna end up being... Oh, that's a little too dark. There we go. The two ridges along the top there are going to be that light pink color with the dark pink all around it. And then I'm going to do his sort of mouth, his mandibles, I'm going to do as that kind of yellow color. Make it look like those are the sort of like middle part of the flower. And it'll be fun. And like I said, we're going to come back to this guy because there's a lot of fun detail work that we can do on him that we can go over together, and I can show you guys some cool techniques. I'm really looking forward to playing around with the rocks that he's holding, trying to make those look as sort of crystalline as possible. I might while off camera do some practicing on those, because I've played around with the cockpit jeweling, but those are generally very sort of even and uniform. So this will be an interesting experiment playing around with things that aren't as even and uniform. Oh man, even just this color on here, I'm really digging how it's bringing it out. This is a lot of fun. And I'm honestly very impressed with how well this starter brush has been performing. Like it's a nice kind of mid-sized brush. It's not quite as small as my detail brush. It's not quite as big as my regiment brush. Sorry, character brush, that's what it's called. Also, I didn't put it on there, but if you guys are looking for any of these brushes, if you go to the zulusgames.com website, there should be a little search arrow up at the top, or you can click on the shop button. You can type in brushes, and you'll get our full line of brushes should be in there for you. And I won't lie to you, these are not the best quality brushes. But at the same time, they're also still very functional. I've been using these for all the ones that I've been doing on the stream. I've really been... My original plan was to stick with just the paints from that starter kit, but very quickly I started working on projects that already had sort of established color schemes, so I ended up going out of the way. But I have been managing to only use that first group of brushes that we got in the beginning. Which, as a reminder, is this starter brush here, the one from the starter kit. We've got the monster brush here, which is our kind of bigger bristles. I use this a lot for... that tip is not looking great. I use this one for, washes and that sort of thing. We've, of course, got ourselves a good old-fashioned dry brush that's flat bristles. And then in kind of I like these, the triangular handles because they're a little bigger, easier to hold. We've got the regiment brush, which is sort of the workhorse brush. It gets a nice tiny tip. You can really point this thing. You can really get some work done with that. And then for when I need to get nice and small details, I've got the character brush. Which has a nice fine point. Now, you can go smaller than this. There are definitely smaller brushes than this. However, I find that a lot of times, once it starts getting that small, and you can kind of see it a little bit in the last episode with the Wolverine, I waited just a little too long with the light green on my on the brush, and it dried out. So... you want to have a good enough quality brush that it can make a nice sharp point, because if you can use a slightly larger brush, it's going to be a little easier to work with. You're not going to have to be worrying about it drying out. But there's some situations where you just need a very fine tip. And it doesn't mean that you need a lot of you need to not have a lot of bristles. It just means that you need to be able to bring it to a fine point. Because this one has quite a bit of bristles, but you could still get an incredibly tiny point on there. Like, you can really get some small details with this guy. All right, so we've gotten a good start on this guy so far. We've got that body, which I'm going to try to figure out what I want to do with that, so that when we come back to this, we can pretty that up. Because I'm not really, I don't know, just really not really pleased with it. I think maybe just a wash might kind of help me with the color, but I don't know. Anyway, we've got these branches, which I'm very happy with. A nice orange, brown, the red wash. You can really create some interesting colors with those. We've got our main body. We've started on the vine to kind of unify the color there. Got the nice dark thing, the nice dark wood there. Ooh, we got a little vine under here we'll need to get. And that's just, I really do like the detail they put into this one. Gotta figure out what we're doing with this little broken patch here. Got some opportunities there. But yeah, playing around with Snail. He's a lot of fun. Like I said, next week we're probably gonna go back to BattleTech minis, but then the week after that, we're coming back to this guy to get some detail work. Because I really wanna do some detail, some finishing work. But yeah, that is going to be all for this week. Thank you so much for joining. If you're looking to get anything that you saw that I was working with here, you can. In the description, I've included the wet palette, the encounter box, and then all the contrast paints. Yeah. Well, until next time, stay safe out there, have fun, enjoy your painting, and I will see you next week. Bye.